It's a jungle out there. In today's episode, we show you all the harvests we made from our food jungle, a tour of the California garden, some things for you to do in your garden this month. All this and a lot more coming up. So let's begin with all the harvests we made this month. Beginning with amaranth greens. We had a lot of amaranth growing on our raised bed, and as you can see, it looks beautiful. The flowers are also beautiful, but the leaves are what are the edible part, and which is what we are going to harvest today. Now, we did harvest amaranth in the last month as well, and this time, since the plant has grown so big, we are harvesting the entire plant, cutting it down, because once the flowers start forming and the seeds start forming, you will have amaranth plants all over your garden. So just look at our harvest here, beautiful looking harvest, and we are going to be removing the individual leaves for consumption. And amaranth is a superfood. It is loaded with vitamins and minerals. You can look at our harvest here, beautiful looking amaranth greens. Apples. Yes, you can grow a lot of apples in Southern California, and from our 4-in-1 apple tree, we got a lot of apples. You can see one apple here. And this tree is very small. As the tree grows, we will get more apples. You can see one more here. So all in all, we were very happy with the apples that we harvested from our garden. Beans. Between the raised beds on the trellis, we were growing all our beans, as you can see here. And the month of July was the month where we probably harvested a lot of beans, most of the beans from these plants. And we have multiple varieties of pole beans growing. This is the Kentucky Wonder pole bean, a very high producing variety. As you can see, produced a lot of beans, which we are harvesting here. And the benefit of growing beans on a trellis like this is you get a lot of area where the beans can grow and produce. And you can harvest a lot of beans from such a setup. And we are still harvesting the Kentucky Wonder pole beans, a very high yielding bean variety. And this is the other bean variety that we were growing. This is the heirloom pole bean variety. It produces long pods, which are a little pale yellow in color, pale green, pale yellow, but still a very high producer as well, just like the Kentucky Wonder pole beans. And you can see we are harvesting a lot of beans, and these plants will keep giving back. The more beans we harvest, the more the plants will produce. And just look at this massive harvest here. These are a lot of beans. And we are back in just a few days, and you can see there are a lot more beans here. So the benefit of growing pole beans versus bush beans is that you get way more harvest compared to bush beans, just because of so much area that's available for the plants to produce. And just waiting for about a week or so, the beans have grown back, and you can see how many more beans are here, and we are harvesting all these beans. And just look at our beans harvest here, beautiful looking beans. Now we were also growing bush beans, and just to show you a comparison of how bush beans provide harvest compared to pole beans, you can see that the plants are not too big. Now there is some kind of a spider mite issue on this plant. You can see the leaves turning yellow. But still you can see that the amount of beans that this plant has produced is way less compared to a pole bean plant. And that's just because it is a smaller plant, it takes up less space. But if you have containers and you're limited on space, growing bush beans is a very good option compared to pole beans. Because for pole beans you need a lot of support and all that. But for bush beans you can just grow them in any container or any other area of your garden and get some decent harvests. And you can see some bush beans that we were growing on our raised bed as well. Not taking up too much space, but still providing some beans. Now we were also growing our yard-long beans. These are very delicious beans. If you haven't grown these, please do try growing them in your home garden. They are a little more difficult to grow than conventional beans. They do require hotter weather. But these are extremely nice beans. We love eating them. And because they are so long, even if you get a few harvests from your plant, you can still use it quite effectively. And you can look at our yard-long beans here, also called asparagus beans. They are extremely delicious beans. something you must try growing in your home garden. And that's another harvest from our bean plant. As you can see, beautiful looking harvest. Moving on to beets. Now we didn't have a lot of beets growing, but we had a couple growing in a container. And what I wanted to show you was that even if you have a container with other vegetables growing, you can still grow plants like beets along the sides of the container. And you can see we just had a couple of beets, but these are extremely nice looking beets. Very nice, very delicious. Bitter gourds. We were growing bitter gourds in our container, and we usually don't consume a lot of bitter gourds, but it's still a very healthy vegetable to eat. So we do grow 1 or 2 plants every year, and this time we are growing our bitter gourd plants in a container. And you can look at our harvest here. Beautiful looking bitter gourds, and bitter gourds are an acquired taste. So if you haven't eaten bitter gourds or bitter melons, do try it out first before you start growing. It's extremely bitter in taste, but has its own unique flavor, which is hard to describe. But you can look at how many beautiful bitter gourds or bitter melons we are getting from just one plant. Bottle gourds. Now we were growing our bottle gourd plants in a container as well with a very large trellis. And you can see one more bottle gourd that we harvested. This is the trendy kind of bottle gourd, the round bottle gourd. Beautiful looking vegetable, as you can see here. Butternut squash. We weren't growing a lot of butternut squash plants. However, on the sides of the container that we were growing our fruit trees, we did have some butternut squashes growing. And you can look at the butternut squash. It's quite amazing to look at. Homegrown butternut squash is extremely delicious and very easy to grow. And you can look at our harvest here. Beautiful looking butternut squash. Cabbage. Now, while not a warm weather vegetable or a hot weather vegetable, we were still growing one cabbage once again along the container near our fruit tree. And you can see that we still got a decent sized cabbage head. So all in all, for a summer cabbage, can't really complain. This was a good head of cabbage. Cucumbers. One of my favorite summer vegetables to grow is cucumber. Here you can look at the Armenian cucumber. These are extremely large cucumbers, very nice tasting cucumbers as well. And this is the green variety. There's also a white variety of Armenian cucumber. And just look at how large these cucumbers are. Look at our harvest here, beautiful looking cucumbers. And here's one more Armenian cucumber. And these cucumbers get extremely large. As you can see here, quite beautiful looking, and that's a lot of cucumber. We were also growing the beet alpha cucumber in our raised bed, and you saw the harvest from that plant last month. And this plant was down to its last leg. You can see that the leaves have started yellowing. But we still got a lot of cucumbers from this plant, as you can see here. And this was probably our last harvest. You can look at the cucumbers here, beautiful looking cucumbers. Eggplants. One of the best vegetables you can grow in the summer are eggplants. Loaded with nutrients and extremely delicious. Eggplants are not only easy to grow, but it will provide you with abundant harvests throughout the summer season. This is the Indian eggplant, the small Indian eggplant. You can let it grow larger as well, or you can harvest them when they are slightly smaller. Either way, they are extremely delicious vegetables. And this is the Indian medium-sized eggplant, bright purple in color. Very nice looking eggplants, very delicious as well. And these were also growing on the raised beds in our garden. You can look at the harvest here, beautiful looking eggplants. We also had the early long variety of eggplants growing in a container. Now these eggplants are very unique. They have a very unique taste. They also produce a lot of eggplants because they are smaller in size, longer as well. And this is just a very unique tasting eggplant that you must try growing in your home garden if you like eating eggplants. And these produced abundantly, as you can see here, even in a container. And we are harvesting all of these beautiful looking early long eggplants. Now eggplants can easily be grown in containers. All varieties of eggplants can easily grow in containers. So you must try growing eggplants in containers if you haven't already. They'll give you an abundant harvest during the summer season. And you can look at our early long eggplant harvest here. Beautiful looking eggplants. And back to our raised bed, the Indian variety of eggplant was still producing a lot of eggplants. So we kept harvesting the eggplants every few days. And I was really happy with the way these heirloom Indian variety of eggplants produced. You can see here beautiful looking eggplants that keep coming as the season progresses. And just look at our harvest here. Beautiful looking Indian small eggplants that are also very delicious. Figs. One of my favorite fruits to eat in the summers are figs. We were growing the mission fig in a container. Large container, which is actually due for repotting, which I will do soon. But you can look at how beautiful these figs are. The mission figs are one of the tastiest figs I've eaten. They actually get a 10 out of 10 on the taste rating compared to all other figs. And once again, figs are extremely nutritious, very delicious as well, very unique taste. And by eating a variety of fruits and vegetables, you can ensure that you're getting all the vitamins and minerals for optimum health. Now I only harvest the figs that are extremely ripe, and they should have a nice dark color, as you can see here. The figs that are not so ripe will not have that dark purple color. And once the figs ripen, it's best to harvest them as soon as possible so that the critters don't get to them. You can see this particular fig is not extremely ripe, but the other one is. So all in all, from just a small plant growing in a container, we did get a lot of figs. And I'm really excited to transplant this into a larger container very soon so that we can get even more figs in the upcoming years. We also had the Little Miss Figgy plant growing in a container. Now this is a very compact fig plant. You can get this at Home Depot. Most of the Home Depot locations have this plant. And this is a very compact plant. It's a dwarf plant. Extremely good for growing in containers. And the fruits have a very unique taste. As you can see here, the harvest looks beautiful. Hummingbird tree leaves. We were growing our hummingbird tree in our greenhouse. And now that it's summer, we can actually keep it outside. During the months of July and August, they will be outside. But this is an extremely nutritious green and it's also very delicious. I was actually surprised to find out how good tasting these greens are. These are loaded with nutrients. And once you harvest the leaves, you can harvest the individual leaflets, as you can see here. All these individual leaflets have multiple leaves. So that's why you get a lot of greens when you grow the hummingbird tree. Both the leaves as well as the flowers of the hummingbird tree are edible. And this is extremely nutritious, high in protein, very good for your health as well. And you can look at our hummingbird tree leaves harvest here. Beautiful looking greens, as you can see. Hyacinth beans. The hyacinth bean plant that we were growing in our ground has turned into a very large plant, as you can see here. And having a large plant means getting a lot of harvests of these hyacinth beans. So the plant has grown so tall now that I might trim it down in the next month. But you can look at how many hyacinth beans we are getting. And we continue to harvest a lot of hyacinth beans from this plant. It's almost a 10-foot plant now. And you can look at all the beans that we are harvesting here. Just look at the harvest here. Beautiful looking hyacinth beans. And in just a few days, we were back at harvesting more beans that you can see here. All in all, we got a lot of harvests of hyacinth beans this month. Ivy gourd. We were growing ivy gourds in our container. As you can see here, this is one variety of ivy gourd that is longer in size. And this is growing in a container. This is the first year and it has already fruited, as you can see. Ivy gourds are again very delicious. They taste like spicy cucumbers. You do need to cook them before you eat them. Now you can grow ivy gourds in containers as well as in raised beds and in the ground. The plants do get very large, so I like growing them in the container. You can look at our first harvest of ivy gourds here. They're looking beautiful. And we do have ivy gourds growing in the ground as well. You can look at the fruits from the one plant that is growing in the ground. These are also the long variety of ivy gourds. And since this plant is growing in the ground, I provided it a larger trellis. However, this is the first year this plant is growing. It hasn't grown that big yet. But you can look at all the ivy gourds it's producing. I was pretty amazed. Now this is the other variety of ivy gourd that we were growing in a container. This is the shorter variety, a little more stout. However, the taste is also very unique. Each of these varieties have their own unique taste, and once you chop them up, you can really mix them and cook them together. You won't really see a difference in the taste. You can look at our ivy gourds here, beautiful looking ivy gourds from even smaller containers like these. And now we are back on our raised bed where we had a large ivy gourd plants growing. And these are also producing quite a lot of ivy gourds, as you can see. And this is the harvest from our raised beds. As you can see, beautiful looking ivy gourds. And these produced abundantly. Lemon guavas. They taste nothing like lemon, it just looks like lemon. But these little fruits are one of the most delicious fruits that is growing in my garden right now. This plant is actually not even in the guava family, but they taste like guavas. They are amazing. The taste is really good. I was so surprised at how nice these fruits taste. And they are very similar to the strawberry guavas, but I think taste-wise I would rate lemon guavas a little higher. These are very delicious guavas. They have a very tropical taste, very nice soft seeds as well, easy to eat. And they produce a lot of guavas. And this again is a small plant, just 6 months old, but it's producing a few guavas this year. All in all, the lemon guava is one plant that I highly recommend that you grow in your home garden. Cantaloupes. We were growing cantaloupes or muskmelon in a container next to a small fruit tree. And the melons are now ready for harvest. As you can see, when they are ready for harvest, they will just fall off the vine. And this one here is not ready. So you can see it's still attached to the vine. So we won't be harvesting this one. But just look at the one that we harvested. This is extremely fragrant, very juicy, very nice melon. Okra. Okra is one vegetable that loves the heat of the summer season and produces a lot of okras in July and August. This is the Nombo giant variety of okra. It produces really large okras that can be harvested a little late, unlike the other okras which become fibrous as soon as you delay harvesting it. And these are extremely large okras. The plant also is large. This is the heirloom variety. I have been growing and saving seeds for many years for this heirloom variety of okra. And you can look at how beautiful these okras are. This is our first harvest of okras. Beautiful looking okras here. And in just a few days, the okras will keep coming back. During the summer season, you may have to watch your okra almost every day. If you don't watch it, it may become large and fibrous and may not be that good to eat. So keep watching your okras during the summer season every day or two, and you will not miss harvesting some really tender and delicious okras. And we had just a couple of containers where we were growing our Nombo giant okra, and they both seem to be doing good. And I think we should be getting okras throughout the next month as well. The plants look very healthy. Look at the harvest here, beautiful looking okras. And once again, in a few days, the okras have grown back and we are back for another round of harvest. You can see the leaves are looking healthy as well. The okras are looking beautiful. Now, if you do get aphids on your okra plants, it's very common. I just use my water hose to rinse them off and keep harvesting these beautiful okras as you see here. Onions. We were growing onions in our raised bed, and this was due for harvest for quite a long time. And we finally harvested all our onions in the month of July. And you can see we got quite a lot of big bulbs. These are all grown from sets, onion sets, not onion seeds. And one of the things I noticed with growing onions from sets is that the necks are very thick. For some reason, the bulbs do get big. It's not that the bulbs are small, but the necks are too thick to use. I've never encountered this problem when growing onions from seeds. And we also had a lot of onions growing in our green stalk planter. You can see we laid out all the tiers of the green stalk classic planter. We planted one onion in each of the pockets. And what I noticed was that the onions that I was growing in the green stalk planter were a little larger than the ones growing in the raised bed. Probably because of better drainage in the green stalk planter, since it's a container. But overall, I was quite happy that I could grow 30 onions, yes, 30 onions in just about 2 square foot of space in the green stalk planter. So if you don't want to use the space on your raised beds for onions, the green stalk planter is a great option for your home garden. You can use coupon code CAG to get $10 off your order when you purchase the green stalk planter. And it's a very useful thing to have in your home garden. I've been using the green stalk planters for many years now. Just look at the onions here. We are drying them on the drying rack. It's a DIY drying rack. And once the onions are cured, they will be ready for consumption. But you can also start using them right away. The ones on the left are slowly cured and the ones on the right are not so cured. So we will be using the onions as we need them. Peppers. We were growing several varieties of peppers. This is the big Thai chili pepper, one of my favorite pepper varieties that I grew this season. These are basically Thai chilies, but they are extremely spicy. So if you like Thai chilies, if you like the spice of Thai chilies, you will love the big Thai chili pepper. They almost look like cayenne peppers, but they are extremely hot. They also produce a lot, as I mentioned. So all in all, it's a very good variety of chili to grow. And you can see that some of these have turned red and they are hotter when they are red. And here is the big Thai chili peppers. And we were growing another plant in a container, the same variety, the big Thai chili peppers. And this also produced a lot. As you can see here, the plant has a lot of fruits on it. It did produce a lot of chili peppers. This is our first harvest here. You can see here the peppers look beautiful. And we also had the bird's eye chili peppers. This was growing in the ground. We also had one growing in a container. But the bird's eye chili pepper is also a very hot pepper. It is extremely good tasting as well. And this pepper plant produces peppers that are upright, like you see here. Lots of chili peppers. The bird's eye chili pepper is one chili pepper that I highly recommend that you grow if you like really hot peppers. So both the big Thai chili and the bird's eye chili peppers, they are extremely spicy peppers, extremely nice to grow in your home garden if you like spicy hot peppers. And the bird's eye chili pepper will also turn red when it's ripe and also when it's the hottest. Poblano peppers. One of my favorite pepper varieties to grow is the poblano pepper. And I really like the poblano pepper because it not only gives you the flavor of bell peppers, it also gives you a little bit of spice. So it's a little more spicy than the green bell pepper, the sweet bell pepper. And that's why I really love growing the poblano pepper. And here are the sweet bell peppers. They are not very spicy, in fact not spicy at all, but a very versatile vegetable to grow in your home garden that you can use for a variety of dishes. We also had the hot banana peppers. These are overwintered from last year. They are still growing, still producing these huge peppers as you can see here. The hot banana peppers are also very nice if you just saute them. We also had the hot cayenne peppers. These are also overwintered peppers growing from last year, last few years actually. We had the same pepper plant growing for about 3 years now. And these are the Indian style cayenne peppers. Once again, they are spicy. But I think the big Thai chili peppers are a little more spicy than this one. And then the bird's eye chili as well is spicier than this pepper variety. The cayenne pepper is also an abundant producer, produces lots of peppers and can be easily overwintered. So those are the benefits of growing the cayenne pepper. And just look at our platter of different varieties of peppers here. They're just beautiful, loaded with vitamins and nutrients, very delicious and ready to eat. Ridge gourd, also called the Chinese cucumber. The ridge gourd is a very versatile vegetable. You can use it for a variety of dishes. And you need to harvest these ridge gourds when they are tender. If you harvest them too late, they become a little fibrous. So this one that you see here is the perfect time to harvest the ridge gourds. You can see here beautiful looking ridge gourds. And there are many more coming up for our harvest for next month. Snake gourds. The snake gourds were growing in a container. You have seen us harvesting this last month as well. So we continued harvesting the snake gourds from this container. Now the snake gourds are a vegetable that you have to really try first before you grow it in your home garden. For those who like snake gourds, it's a very acquired taste. I've been eating snake gourds for many years now. It has a very unique taste and it has to be prepared in a very unique way as well. But it's a very healthy vegetable. Once again, you need to eat a variety of vegetables and fruits to get all the vitamins and minerals, especially if you're eating mostly a plant-based diet. Just make sure you're getting your nutrients from a variety of fruits, vegetables, so that you can maintain optimum health. And you can see some more snake gourds here. Beautiful looking snake gourds, multiple varieties of snake gourds as well. And this is a harvest, a lot of snake gourds harvested from just 2 containers. Swiss chard. If you like spinach, you will love the Swiss chard greens. Swiss chard can be grown year-round in Southern California. It provides an excellent alternative to spinach, which is annual and can be grown seasonally. You can see we are harvesting all these tender leaves. You can leave the older leaves, you can compost them, but the tender leaves are the ones that you should harvest. They are the most flavorful. And once you harvest the tender leaves, the plant will keep producing more leaves. But you can see our Swiss chard harvest here. Lots of Swiss chard greens, very delicious greens. And something that can be grown year-round in Southern California very easily. Tomatoes. No summer harvest is complete without tomatoes. And you can look at our single stem tomato plants here. Beautiful looking tomatoes that we began harvesting. And we had multiple varieties growing. This is the delicious variety of tomato, which produces large tomatoes, beefsteak style tomatoes that are on our raised bed. And by growing single stem tomatoes, you make the plant focus on producing fruits rather than producing greens. And this worked out quite well for us this year. You can see some more tomatoes that we are harvesting, plus these heirloom Indian tomatoes that were growing in a container. Once again, this was a single stem tomato plant. However, you can see it has bent down a little bit. And just look at our first harvest of tomatoes here. Beautiful looking tomatoes, multiple varieties as well. And we were back onto our raised bed harvesting the celebrity tomato. The celebrity tomato is something that a lot of people like just because of its shape, its size, and the fact that it's very productive. And once the tomatoes ripen to about this much, you can harvest them and they will ripen on the shelf. They will turn completely red. And for some reason, because we were getting a lot of heat in the summer season, for some reason the summers were getting hotter and the tomatoes were starting to degrade once it reached this color. So we were harvesting all these tomatoes and were ripening them on the shelf once they reached this stage. And we also had these Roma tomatoes. This is another favorite of a lot of people. They love these Roma tomatoes just because of the size, the flavor. The Roma tomatoes have excellent flavor. You can try growing Roma tomatoes, you won't be disappointed. It's a bush type determinate plant that produces a lot of tomatoes. And you can look at a tomato harvest here, beautiful looking tomatoes. And we are back on our raised beds harvesting the delicious variety of tomatoes. I just wanted to show you how huge these tomatoes are. Once again, beefsteak style tomatoes that have a lot of flesh, a lot of juice. And you can see how many tomatoes we are getting from our single stem tomatoes. So in the months of June and July, we harvested a lot of tomatoes. As you can see here, the tomatoes keep coming. And then I have a new batch. You can look at our harvest here. Beautiful looking tomatoes, very large, very nice and very delicious. And this is another harvest of our Indian heirloom tomatoes. Once again, nice looking tomatoes. And we also had our bush Roma tomato from last year that we planted in December, overwintered now. And it's still producing tomatoes. For some reason, it's growing crazy and producing a lot of tomatoes. And you can look at some more tomatoes from the raised beds, looking beautiful. And look at our harvest here. Beautiful looking tomatoes, including the Roma tomatoes. Come here, run. Good boy. And now let's take a tour of the garden. Starting with the raised beds. In our first raised bed, we planted a few tomato plants, some sweet potato plants as well. And you can see some of the plants that have grown from the compost that we added in this raised bed. And we have a lot of okras. You can see the okras have taken off now. The weather is perfect and all that extra compost at the bottom gives a lot of nutrients to these plants. And on the other side we have our pole bean plants. You can see the pole beans that are growing on the trellis between our raised beds. You saw us harvest a lot of pole beans from these plants. And I've saved some of these bean pods to go to seed, so I can save the seeds. And on the other side we have more bean plants, as you can see. These are all pole bean plants. So it really looks like a nice area with the plants on both sides. We have the Armenian cucumber. And on this bed we have all our eggplants and peppers. Mostly eggplants, a few pepper plants as well. These are the Thai chilies. And a lot of these eggplants, the Indian small variety of eggplant as well as the medium variety of eggplant. And on the next raised bed we have the Aswad eggplant, which produces really large eggplants. You can see one being formed here. We have the beets, which are not doing too well in the summer season, plus the okras. For some reason this patch of okra is not doing as well as the other patch. But the red okras or the burgundy okras are still producing very well now. You can see some okras on the plant. And in the middle we have this jungle area. This is the ridge gourd plant and it has grown like crazy. You can see how much foliage this plant has and it's producing a lot of ridge gourds, as you can see. So this plant has grown totally wild. You can see a lot of fruits being produced as well. Very delicious fruits all over the trellis. And summer is a time when most of these gourds will grow quite well. We have our pepper plants on the next raised bed. These are the poblano peppers. We're still getting some after harvesting a lot this month. This is the Santaka chili peppers. Very nice, very hot peppers. And we have a lot of tomatoes. Now this is our next batch of tomatoes. These actually are volunteer plants that grew from the compost. And you can see they're already producing some tomatoes. Now I have no idea what variety this is, but we'll soon find out. And then we have our cucumbers. There are a lot of cucumber plants. This is the sturdy trellis that we built by zip tying about 6 tomato cages. And you can see all the cucumbers are growing quite well. This is a type of cucumber called dosakai. They are growing quite well here. And we have several other varieties of cucumbers that will grow very soon. There's one variety here on this side. And on the final raised bed, you can look at all our single stem tomatoes. You can see they have grown quite well, quite nice. and they are still producing a lot of tomatoes. They do need a little bit of pruning. As you can see, I've been a little relaxed on the pruning, but I will get to it soon. And then we have our corn patch. You can see beautiful looking corn plants. They're quite tall, quite beautiful, and they will be yielding corn very soon. And right next to that, we have a couple of pepper plants. This is the yellow pepper, followed by our taro root plant and our ivy gourds. You can see our ivy gourd plant producing a lot of ivy gourds on the trellis behind this. You can see a lot of fruits here. And that completes the tour of our raised bed garden. Let's now move on to the containers. In our first area of containers, we have our 4-in-1 apple tree that we just moved on this area. We have our Thai chili peppers. So you can see yielding a lot of peppers here. We have a bush bean plant that did give us some beans this month. And then we have our eggplants. This is the black moon eggplant, producing a few eggplants now. We have our single stem Indian heirloom tomato that's almost towards the end of its life now. Followed by our mint plant, which is not doing that great in the summer season, in the heat of the summer. Followed by our Santaka chili plant. You can see a lot of chilies on this plant. Followed by our holy basil plant. This is the purple stemmed holy basil. Followed by our turmeric plant. That's grown quite big now. And our galangal plant as well. It loves the summer season. In our green stalk planter, we are growing a lot of strawberries. The perfect way to grow strawberries. And because it's summer, we are getting some strawberries now. And we will be harvesting them soon. So strawberry plants do produce in the spring and the summer. And you can see some strawberries here. They're ripening now. And let's look at our containers on the other side now. In our first container, we have our gooseberry plant that's growing well. Followed by our jumbo orange tree that's doing okay. Followed by our Nombo giant okra. As you can see, a lot of okras on this plant. Still growing very strong now in the summer season. And our hyacinth bean plant, which is now taken off completely. It's grown all the way to the top of the trellis, producing some good quality hyacinth beans. We have our Egyptian walking onions that haven't produced onions yet, but I'm waiting. A couple of single stem tomato plants that did give us a lot of tomatoes and still have a few on them. Our snake gourd plant, which is now towards the end of its season, it did produce a lot of snake gourds. We have our taro root plant. It's producing a lot of taro roots and will be ready for harvest soon. We have our tomato plant. This is the ace tomato. Not doing that well, but we'll see once it starts fruiting. And our pepper plants, it has some kind of a disease. I believe thrips got to it. Something happened to these pepper plants and they're not doing that well. Followed by our ivy gourd plant. This is the long variety of ivy gourd. We just harvested a lot of ivy gourds from this plant. And there are still a few on the plant now. Our mint plant is doing okay. Now this one is in the shade, but some kind of insects got to the leaves of the plant, as you can see here. So we might trim this plant soon. Our turmeric plant is looking nice and big. It even has a turmeric flower at the base. This is a beautiful looking flower. Followed by another single stem tomato plant, which is now producing a few tomatoes at the top. We have more Nombo giant okra plants producing okras now. As you can see on the top, we have a lot of okras. This is our bird's eye chili pepper plant. Now we had a couple of plants. This one growing in the container is not doing as well as the one in the ground. We have our hyacinth bean plant. This is the bush hyacinth bean. We are trying to save the seeds for this plant, this variety. followed by carrots. We sowed these carrots a while ago and they're just beginning to take off now. We have our bitter gourd plant or the bitter melon plant, and we harvested a lot of bitter gourds. We will be saving a few seeds from this bitter melon variety. Followed by our snake gourd plant. Once again, we have one snake gourd that we can save for seeds. And we have this aswad eggplant that is now producing a few eggplants that you can see here. On the other side, we have our longevity spinach plant that's doing good, followed by our hyacinth bean plant. That's actually the ivy gourd from the adjacent plant, but the hyacinth bean plant is doing quite good. It has reached the top of the trellis, producing some good hyacinth beans. And this is our ivy gourd plant. Once again, you saw us harvest a lot of ivy gourds from this plant. It's looking pretty good now. And then our early long eggplant. You can still see a lot of eggplants on this plant. And our bottle gourd plant that has one bottle gourd growing as of now. And that completes the tour of our containers. And now let's look at some things to do in your garden this month. So in the summer season, you need to watch out for plants like basil, which will start bolting, producing flowers, and make sure that you prune them. And I do the same thing with cilantro. I do prune my cilantro plants as well to harvest them because they will go to bolt in the hot summer season. So you can still use a lot of this cilantro, but I highly recommend that you keep a watch on your garden and prune your plants accordingly in the heat of the summer season. Now, planting is something I wanted to discuss as well. To label my plants, I use a thermal label printer. And you can see I'm printing out these names of plants that I'm planting or I'm planning to plant. And these labels go on popsicle sticks, as you can see here. And this helps me label all the plants that I'm planting. Now I'm using a seed starting mix. This is a mix of coconut coir and vermiculite. You can also use peat moss and perlite if you want to. But this mix has given me good results. I use different kinds of mixes, by the way. So this is just one of the seed starting mixes I use. And what you do is you keep a tray that can be bottom watered and then fill up the 6-cell container. This is the one I commonly use for starting most of my seeds. And you fill it up with the seed starting mix. And you don't have to compact it too much, but just give it a little press so that you don't have any air pockets in the cells when you sow the seeds. And that's about it. Once you fill this up, keep it in the tray and then do this for all the cells that you have. And once that's done, you want to moisten the seed starting mix. And to do that, I gently water on the top first to get the top part wet. That starts the saturation process quickly. And once I water it a little bit on the top, I will fill the bottom of the reservoir with water and let the water soak in. And it takes about an hour or 2 hours to soak in all the water. And you can see here, once the water is soaked up, it looks a little different in color. And these are all the tags or labels that I created. We're going to be sowing all these seeds in these seed starting cells. So in the month of August, it's a good idea to start cool season crops like broccoli, spinach, cauliflower, cabbage, beets. It's a good time to start all these seeds so that by the time it's September or October, you will have all these plants ready to go into your garden. And you just sow the seeds like this. And I have a complete episode on sowing seeds and germinating seeds and taking care of them up to the seedling stage. And I'll provide a link to that video in the description below. Now you can also direct sow seeds like carrots. We are sowing these seeds in this whiskey barrel container here. And carrots are a good cool season crop. And there are different ways to sow carrot seeds. Here we're just making rows with our fingers, just to make sure that the seeds are a little separated from each other. And then we sow the seeds in these rows. We just sow a few seeds along the row, and then you will be thinning out these seeds later. So for carrots, this is a good way to start your seeds. And August is a good time to start your carrot seeds, so that by the time the cool weather sets in, you will have your carrot plants growing. Is he on the tree? So there we have it, folks. That was our episode on the California garden for the month of July. If you found this video useful, do hit that like button. And if you're not already a subscriber, hit that subscribe button. If you have a question or comment, leave them in the comments box below. We'll see you again soon. Happy gardening.